And now, from the great state of Mississauga in Ontario, Canada, it's the Ted Wallachin Podcast. Brought to you by Tom's Place. For the finest in men's fashion, Tom's Place will suit you. And ETP Canada, providing estate administration with ease. ETP Canada. And now, here's Ted.
Thanks so much, Becky, and hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ted Wallachin Podcast. Glad you have joined us. We appreciate you being here, and I think you're going to enjoy this week's show. I hope you enjoy all of them, actually. My special guest this week began his fascinating career in hairstyling at the youthful age of 13. Yeah, 13 here in Toronto. Within 4 years, at the age of only 17, he left for Los Angeles and became the personal hairdresser for Cher on the highly acclaimed Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour. Now, part of his work there was working with the legendary designer Bob Mackie, which inspired their work together, the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, to create a category for the recognition of hairdressing in the annual Emmy Awards. During his storied career, he also worked with such great stars as Dick Van Dyke, Morgan Freeman, Richard Pryor, to name a few, and we will name many, many more. So right now, without further ado, Gary Chowen, how are you?
Hey, I'm fine, Ted. How are you doing today?
I'm very well. It's good to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah. Has been.
It's been a good pandemic and a half, I think, at least. Something like that. A lot of people don't realize that not only are you born in Toronto, but you're born right on Yorkville Avenue, which is, for those people who are not familiar with Toronto, Yorkville at one point was like it was the home of the coffee shops. It was Neil Young and it was Joni Mitchell, etc. Then it started to morph and became now it's a very expensive high end restaurants, Four Seasons Hotel, etc. And your hair salon is there as well, right?
That and 800 other hair salons at one point.
What was it like when you were growing up? Was it the coffee era? Coffee shop era? Yeah.
Definitely. I was born in the original Mount Sinai Hospital, which was at number 100 Yorkville, which I now believe is the Dior store or something high end, with condos on top of it.
Yes, of course.
So, I grew up around the Bathurst, St. Clair, Bathurst, Davenport area. But, of course, as a young lad, I'd always go back and hang out in Yorkville, which was the hippie era. And I was one of those long-haired kids, smoking dope on the street sometimes and just enjoying you can't even describe the vibe that was going on and the people that were there. A lot of them became very successful. Others just dropped off the face of the earth. But Yorkville was great.
What I am trying to wrap my head around, at the age of 13, you take your first job as a shampoo boy at Caruso's salon, which was, if not the highest of end, high-endest salon, one of the top salons in the city. What would inspire a 13-year-old kid to want to do that?
My father said to me that it might be time you got a little job after school doing things. And my father knew Mr. Caruso. And first of all, Caruso's in those days, in the 60s, there was probably 3 very well-known hair salons in the world. One was Alexander in Paris, who did all the kings and queens of Europe. Another one in New York, name just escapes me, but he was a big society hairdresser there, and Caruso's in Toronto. And so my dad phoned Mr. Caruso and got me a part-time job there. And, I looked around, and those guys were like rock stars in the 60s, the hairdressers. Tall, good-looking guys. They all wore 3-piece Lou Miles suits. They drove convertibles. They were dating all the top models. And I figured, how bad can this job be?
Yeah, really.
It was pretty impressive to a 13-year-old kid. So one thing led to another.
Yeah, so I guess that's, if you could draw an analogy, it would be like being a 13-year-old getting a job washing dishes in a restaurant, which then inspires you to become a great chef.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
I mean, the clientele. I mean, first of all, I can remember the Bloor Street streetcar in those days. I'm going back. The stop was, one was Avenue Road, then Bedford. We were right in the middle across from the Royal Conservatory of Music. And the streetcar would be filled to capacity, and the conductor would literally stop the streetcar outside the salon and yell Caruso so it would empty. It was just remarkable.
So these high-end clients are taking streetcars to get
No,
their hair done?
don't forget, we had the high end, but you'd have other people, college girls or people, not everybody drove cars then.
Yeah, true enough. So a couple of years later, you're like, what, 15, and two television producers became very successful, Alan Bly and Chris Beard. They come to town to CFTO Studios out in the East End of Toronto in Agincourt to tape the Ray Stevens show.
Which was the Andy Williams summer replacement show.
Right. Ray Stevens, for those who may recall him, he did
Guitarzan,
The Streak, and he did a great song called Mr. Businessman, which is a real telltale tune about corruption.
And he was a really good guy. He really was.
Was he? So
Ray was a good man.
So Alan and Chris, they come to Caruso's and they scoop up a bunch of employees from Caruso's. They hired
the salon to do the hair.
Uh-huh.
So my dear friend, who was the manager at Caruso's, who was the one responsible for taking me to Hollywood, my dearly departed friend Larry Robbins, incredible human being, he scooped me up to come out to the studio and help out. And one thing led to another. I, became very close with Alan Bly and Chris Beard. And one thing led to another. And I guess when they got the Sonny and Cher show, I know there's a meeting took place on who's going to do Cher's hair. They had already established Bob Mackey will do the clothes. Bob was just starting out too.
Mm-hmm.
And my name came up in a production meeting because in those days in Los Angeles, Ted, it wasn't a big fashion town. Everybody was long hair, jeans, and there weren't a lot of great hair salons. And so they didn't know how to do long hair up. Whereas at Caruso's, Mr. Caruso would bring in hairdressers from around the world from Italy and France who knew how to do these glamorous hairdos. So I was very fortunate to work with these gentlemen and learn how to do long hair.
Mm-hmm.
So they knew that I could probably be the one to change, along with Bob Mackey, to change it from her hippie image to a glam diva.
Right. And so you're 17 at the time. How old is Cher at this time? Not much older, I guess.
Maybe about 20, 21. Yeah, I was like 17, 18 when this all happened.
Yeah.
I was in my teens. But I should have been in school getting an education. I just got a different education than most teenagers did.
Yeah, well, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, like, okay, so there's a lot of good-looking women hanging around. Not only Cher, who's a beautiful woman, and you're like 17, 18. How do you focus on your job, man? Seriously.
I'll tell you, on Mondays when we had to go to Elizabeth Courtney's studios, which is the famous dress studio on Melrose, where Bob used to work, and his partner then, he was under the wing of a man named Ray Agahan. And Ray used to do like Judy Garland's clothes and Greta Garbo and all these famous people. So, I'd be at the fittings on Monday mornings and in would come Raquel Welch. There's so-and-so, there's so-and-so. It was very hard to focus, I'll tell you, for a kid seeing these beautiful women that, you looked up to as a kid, and there they are in front of you.
And what was Cher like to work for? Because my understanding is Sonny not so much fun, but Cher you really liked, huh?
I love Cher. She was one of the guys. We got along from the first time we ever met. I actually had met her in Toronto previously because the original Sonny and Cher pilot was shot here in Toronto for another production company, and it didn't go anywhere. But I was in the studio and met them, and she doesn't remember that, of course. But anyway, when we did hook up, we just got along famously. She was like one of the guys. And you're right, Sonny was not too well liked. He was like a little Svengali.
Oh, yeah.
Not like that man.
And he was a little older than her as well, right?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Definitely. When he met her, she came into the studios where Phil Spector was working. She was a backup singer. She might have been 16 or something then.
Mm-hmm.
And Sonny had worked at the studio. He was the coffee boy, errand boy. He played tambourine on a lot of the old great hits that Phil Spector produced. And he worked his way up. Hey, I give him credit. Guy wrote some big songs. He was a businessman, and she was the meal ticket. He knew it.
Yeah. Was she ever? And you look back now and you see the amazing talent that she had, not only as a singer, she was a gifted comedian as well. She was a great actress. I mean,
Academy Awards.
Moonstruck.
Yeah.
Just and
Oh, geez.
how long did the Sonny and Cher comedy show last?
I think we did about 4 years.
All out of L.A.
Yeah, out of CBS Television City, which
Mhm.
was, I mean, an incredible place to work at because we were in Studio 41. Next to us was All in the Family. On one side, I had Carol Burnett on the other side. Merv Griffin show across the hall. The Price is Right. Glenn Campbell show. And, I mean, I was there the day, you'll remember this show, on All in the Family, the history-making television show, and Sammy Davis appeared on it.
Yeah.
And the building was electric. And, Sammy would come into our dressing room, say hi. It was just, it was an incredible experience and place to work.
Did you ever get to meet any of the cast from, or befriend any of the cast from All in the Family?
Yeah. I used to, funny, I was telling somebody the story the other day, Sally Struthers, I'd be up in rehearsal halls, which was on, you needed a cab to get there. The building was so big. And so they rehearsed in the studio next to us, and I'd be out in the hallway, and Sally would always borrow quarters from me for the vending machine. She wanted a chocolate bar. And she never did pay me back, now that I think of it. But yeah, you got to, hang out with Carol O'Connor and, the whole cast of all the shows. Yeah.
I mean, it was a summer replacement show, All in the Family. And William Paley, who was the head of CBS Television at the time, asked that a survey be conducted to see whether, because it was notoriously a racist program. It was all done under the guise of humor, but he wanted to see what the result of this kind of would have on the general public, whether it changed their minds, whether it made them more flexible, or in fact turned them the wrong way. And in fact, the research showed that it did turn them the wrong way. He took the research and threw it in the garbage because he didn't want to give up on the show.
Yeah,
and I just wondering whether if you ever had a chance to talk to any of the staff about what their feelings were about some of the things that were being said.
No, to be honest, we never got into discussions like that. Not at that personal level.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd go to rehearsals and, watch them rehearse, and, suddenly, on set you had to have standards and practices. People from some department from somewhere would oversee, and they'd stop tape. No, you can't say that. You have to change the wording to that because it just insinuates a little bit over the line.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I ever really noticed. I wasn't on set that much, but, to really realize what was going on. But, yeah, I know it existed, but still, yeah, it was a great show, wasn't it? Loved
absolutely. Absolutely. And during the years that you worked on the Sonny and Cher show, let's go back to your studio now.
Yeah.
The guests that came through, the notable ones, the ones that really blew you away because of their talent or their kindness, or because they were the exact opposite?
Boy, there's so many we had on. Two gentlemen always stick out in my mind. Jimmy Durante was one. Loved him. CBS had a dresser for the male stars. When you arrived at the artist entrance, they met you. They took your suits and your ties, and they pressed everything, made sure you looked good. And at the end of the day, the only person I ever saw, two people, George Burns. At the end of the day, go up to Norman, who was the gentleman that worked for the studio, and slip him a $50 bill, which was a lot of money in the 70s.
Yeah.
As a tip, and say, Norman, thank you very much. But yeah, all the guests we had on the show were actually all very nice. I personally never had a problem with any of them. I mean, we had Burt Reynolds on. Hysterical man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just went so many people, guests on that show, and they were all nice. I think a lot of them, when they get to a certain level, they become nice. Some are just a-holes on the way up and never change and never become that big because they're not allowed to by certain people that have power.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
after the show came to its conclusion, is that when you moved back to Toronto, or did you still hang out in on the left coast for a while?
I came back to Toronto. I mean, I could see the writing on the wall. It was like by year 2, you could see the separation of the two of them.
Yeah.
After work, he'd go his way, she'd go her way. And I could see, when I was with her alone in the dressing room, would talk and, how unhappy she was with, she was riding high then too, and she wasn't ready to give it all up, so they did the show for career reasons. And yeah, it was sad when it was finishing, because it was such a great show. God, we won Emmys.
Yeah.
It was fun. We got to travel and, yeah, it was a lot of fun. I was sad to go.
Gary Chowen is my guest. So you arrive back now after having this great experience as a stylist in Los Angeles. You're back in Toronto. What's your next move?
Get a job.
Yeah.
Get a job. But luckily, Bly Beard, they kept a family of people on staff, like lighting directors. And whenever they did a show, they hired all of us as a team, and we would go in, and everything would happen on time, on budget, the way they wanted it. No matter where they were shooting in the world, they would send us. We did shows all over the world, which was kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
So, I did a lot of other shows up here with them. We did the Bobby Vinton show, the David Steinberg show,
Right.
on and on. I mean, I did a show once with Chris Beard. He came up here, and it was probably one of the very, very first shows for Viacom in those days, Showtime. And we did a show called, I think they changed the name, I'm not sure. It was called the Sex and Violence Family Hour. Kind of only Chris would come up with that. And Chris made me the associate producer on the show. May have been the only show in the history of television when the credits ran, it said associate producer Gary Chowen. At the bottom of the credits, it said hair Gary Chowen.
Yeah.
So we needed Canadian content. So we had to go to Yuck Yucks to find some comedians we needed on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And there one night was Jim Carrey, 17 years old, just tearing the place up. Chris said, we got to get this guy on our show. So we approached him after his set, and we said, look, we're shooting a show here. It was for Playboy, actually. And would you be interested? And he was all over that. So we essentially gave Jim Carrey his very first job on television.
Wow.
I can remember being in the hallway at CFTO, or as we used to call it in those days, CFI Care. Much better name for a station. You're now watching CFI Care. So I remember Jim asking me, he says, hey, what's Hollywood really, really like? And so I told him what I thought. And luckily, he didn't pay any attention to me. And
I was going to say he went
have a
anyway.
great career. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
What does this kid know?
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So yeah, we gave so many people their careers, and so just besides doing hair, I got to do so many other great things in the business, and so it was fun.
Now you talk about Chris Beard and Alan Bly. Didn't Chris Beard? Did he not create the Gong Show originally before Chuck Barris took it?
Well, there's a funny story there. Chris was sitting in my living room. I had a house on Forest Hill Road in those days. And it might have been about 3 a.m, and we were having a few libations, we'll call it. And he says to me, he goes, hey, I got a great idea for a show. And he goes on to give me the premise of this show. And he says, and I'm going to call it The Gong Show. And I remember looking at him, I said, Chris, without a doubt, that may be the most stupidest thing I've ever heard. Don't ever tell anybody that idea again. Well, he sold that to Chuck Barris for millions.
Yeah, okay.
That show. But he actually took the show it was on in Australia, a friend of his, who used to produce Top of the Pops in London, I remember. That great old English music show. He created the Gong Show in Australia. So, Chris just sort of took it from there and put it in North America.
Right. When did and which came first? Because I forget, Bizarre or Super Dave, and how did that come about?
We did Bizarre first,
right, with John Byner, who's right. One of your closest friends is the godfather of your daughter, I believe, right?
That is correct. I still speak to John. He lives in beautiful near St. Augustine, Florida, in the Palm Coast. Happily married, plays golf, does the occasional job. John just did an actual opera recently, which is kind of fun. Him and his wife, who is an opera singer by trade and dancer. And so he's doing great. He's mentally good and physically good and still does the occasional little job, but John enjoys his life. One of the greatest human beings I've ever known in my life.
So Bizarre was in fact bizarre for a number of different reasons, because it at first you had to tape two versions of it, right? One was for cable TV in the States, which was
right
uncensored to a certain degree, and then the other one was for consumption here in Canada, which was
in North America. We did like Tuesday mornings we shot the Showtime version, which was nudity, and then we'd reshoot it with girls with clothes on. So, how hard was that going to work every day?
Yeah, well, exactly. You get sick every day but Tuesdays. Never ill on a Tuesday this entire life.
No, it was sort of a closed set for only a few people who were allowed in on Tuesdays. I mean, it's amazing how many executives would come down from upstairs at the offices who wanted to suddenly just see how the show was going, and it was always Tuesday morning.
Yeah, exactly. So talk to me about Super Dave and Bob Einstein, whom many people would know from his appearance up until his death, alongside of Larry David.
Yeah, boy. Well, I mean, don't forget Bob. Started out with actually Bob and Steve Martin. A few people know were actual writers on the Sonny and Cher show in those days when we started, and I always look back. It was almost like people I know who worked on the show of the original Saturday Night Live with Belushi and Aykroyd. Their offices were down the hall. And people said there was noises coming out of that room. You did not want to go down there and see what those two lunatics are up to. It was the same thing with Steve Martin and Bob Einstein. There was stuff coming out of that room. We figured, just let them be. Don't ask questions. Let them write. But yeah, Bob started out as a writer on Sonny and Cher. With Steve Martin.
Did he create the character Super Dave?
Yes, he did. Yeah, that he definitely did.
Yeah.
Yeah, as we used to call it sometimes, Stupid Dave. I think between 18 years of Bizarre and Super Dave that we got national television, that's where I learned you can fool all the people all the time. Right? I mean, it was crazy. I mean, we couldn't believe we got paid every Friday to do all this stuff.
Well, you had some really interesting guests on that show as well over the years. Ray Charles, I recall one episode.
Yeah, we had him on a few times, Ray. We let him drive a car once, which was kind of fun.
Ray Charles is blind, for those people who may not know that.
Yeah. I mean, what a treat in life during rehearsals. I just sat down at the piano with Ray while he was running some riffs with the band, and I figured, how cool is this? Sitting with Ray Charles.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Jerry Lee Lewis, he was on the show as well.
Whoa, boy, the killer. I was given the job. I had to babysit him, and
babysit him.
Yeah, well, Jerry was known for suddenly leaving the studio and not showing up again for the show. So I was put in charge. Keep him busy, keep him entertained. Don't let him leave. So I spent a day with Jerry Lee, and at the end of the day, I needed a 2-week paid holiday. I was done. This guy just wore me right out, but. Yeah, I mean, what a treat to be with the killer. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned you worked on the Bobby Vinton show. Don Rickles was on that show at one point.
We had Rickles on the show, yeah. I remember before Don went on, he sweated profusely all the time. And he had, he didn't have a lot of hair in the front. There was a little tuft of hair sticking up. So I went over to him, and I didn't have my comb in my pocket. And I sort of licked my fingers, slapped him on the forehead to, tame this little tuft of hair. And he looked at me like, "What the are you doing, kid?" And I was the great story with Milton Berle. I was actually told to go fuck myself by Milton Berle, which I found an honor.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was in the studio. We broke for lunch, and the guys in Video Central put on it was the Los Angeles Dodger playoff game. And I just happened to be walking through. I looked in it, and I'm watching, a few seconds, and in comes Milton Berle. No one in the studio but me and him. Him and I, sorry. And comes out to me. He's got this cigar. Looks at me. He goes, "What's the score, kid?" I said, I'm sorry, Mr. Berle. I don't know. And he says, "Oh, go yourself." I walked away. I thought, really? What an honor.
having a nice day, are we, Milty?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
really.
he was a funny guy. Yeah.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
kidding.
there's so many people we had on that show.
More of the Ted Wallachin podcast after this.
Do you have an upcoming wedding on your calendar? Hey, it's Ted Wallachin for Tom's Place. If you're the father of the bride or a special guest who needs an elegant new suit or tuxedo, Tom will help you get ready for the spotlight. And if you're the lucky groom, Tom is a friend of the groom and the best man to help you dress the entire wedding party for your special day. Whether it's formal or informal, destination wedding, traditional or contemporary, tailored suits, or classic tuxedos with all the accessories, why rent a tux when it's so affordable to buy a classic that'll take you to events for years to come? Find out more at Tom's Place in Kensington Market. No one can dress you better or save you more than our wedding specialists. And don't forget, enter our wonderful wedding contest at toms-place.com to win a $500 credit for your wedding party outfits. Tom's Place will suit you. Have you been tasked with the role of a state executor or expected maybe in the future you will be? Well, if so, let me make your life a lot simpler by introducing you to my friend Debbie Stanley. Debbie is the founder of ETP Canada. They specialize in estate administration. Their goal simply is to help Canadian executors understand their role and how to deal with the loved one's estate. Let's face it, there's no school for this, but ETP Canada offers services such as executor support, estate accounting, and they have a new online course called Executor Ready. It's an engaging video designed to make estate administration easier and affordable. And those are two comforting thoughts during a stressful time. So call Debbie Stanley at 1-866-309-0387. That's 1-866-309-0387. Or you can get her at info@etpcanada.ca. That's info@etpcanada.ca.
Now back to Ted Wallachin.
There's an interesting story that involves Ed McMahon in Toronto at the CFTO studios, and you and him drinking in a limo?
Well,
Did I get
okay,
that
we
right?
could. Yeah, you are correct in that. He did a segment, and he needed transportation, of course, back to because up in Hoopisville in Scarborough, where CFTO studios are off the highway, and the hotel, is downtown. So I shared a ride with him downtown, and he pulled out of a little duffel bag. He had a bottle of Johnny Walker scotch, and we shared a whole bottle on the way back. I mean, I think Ed drank most of it, but I did my share, and yeah, it was kind of fun. There's Ed and I just sitting in a car having a little cocktail. Yeah, he was a great guy, big guy. Never realized how big he was, but nice man.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I get the feeling that he would be the kind of person that he appeared to be on television.
100%. Yeah, what you saw, you got. That was him. That wasn't an act.
Yeah. Wally and the Beaver. Tony Dow and Jerry Masters.
Yeah, we did a show at Global TV, and we had them on. And Wally then was he was known as the deck doctor. He was building decks for a living. Just a wonderful, wonderful man. Great to talk to. The Beaver actually had the personality of a chair. He was like a beach short, this kid.
Yeah, which is ironic because he would have chewed himself.
Yeah, definitely. But also on that show, we had so many people. Great quick story. Jake LaMotta, right?
The boxer.
Great fighter. Yeah. So I was told beforehand, because we had his ex-wife, Vicky LaMotta, on too on this show, that Jake was still in love with her, and don't go near Vicky too much. Jake's very jealous.
Uh-huh.
So as luck would have it, Vicky took a liking to me, and she's hugging me all the time and kissing me and hanging out. And I look outside the dressing room, and there's Jake looking at me.
Uh-oh.
And I could see this guy just wants to have a piece of me. I figured, oh, come on. I don't want to get beaten up by an old champ. But yeah, that was fun. Jake LaMotta.
Evander Holyfield and George Foreman. You talk about prize fighters. You also had some interaction with.
Yeah, I mean, they were both great guys. I had a lot of fun with them.
Were they part of Super Dave episodes?
We had them on Super Day. Bob was a big sports guy. He loved having sports figures on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very knowledgeable sports guy, Bob. So he loved having those two guys on, and they were both just wonderful, wonderful gentlemen. But I got pictures of George and I going toe to toe, giving him a lesson or two. And Holyfield, that was just before the Tyson fight. I guess we saw him, and I had to give him some tips too.
Yeah, I'm sure they were grateful for that.
Yeah, run that way.
Yeah. Gary Chowen is my guest hairstylist. To the star, or a hairapist, I guess you used to refer to yourself to.
Yeah, I give people therapy.
Because hairstylists are like bartenders in many ways, right? People come to spill their guts.
100%. We hear things, but you can't tell them too much. I've been in situations in salons where I look at my book and I see Mrs. So-and-so coming in, and there's her husband, his mistress is coming in after her. I hear, oh, no. But so I had to phone the hubby up and say, look, you better call one of them and tell them not to come today.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're put in certain situations. But yeah, people tell you everything. And I mean, you're an unbiased opinion. You give them the best advice you can.
Yeah.
As I tell them, look, I'm not charging you for the haircut. It's for the therapy today, honey.
Yeah.
That's what the bill is for.
Anything in your career, is that anything like what was depicted in the film Shampoo, the Warren Beatty film from years ago?
Oh, geez. That was, I knew the person who was what the movie was really about, Gene Shakove, who was a very famous hairdresser in LA. And in those days, I mean, everybody, Steve McQueen would hang out with him, and Warren Beatty would hang out with him. Gene owned a nightclub. He had all the models. And Gene would sleep with anything but the heartbeat, animal, mineral, or vegetable. He did not care. And I mean, this guy was a legend. So that's where the movie came from, was an actual real life Hollywood hairdresser. But that was a bit before my time there.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, it all happened. Sure.
You met Richard Pryor as well in your career?
Yeah, we had him on the David Steinberg show. He was an interesting guy. You could see, that he was always thinking about something, but he was always funny and on, and he was nice to everybody. I think it was well before his major drug days.
Mm-hmm. That was back in the days when he used to perform in a suit.
Yes.
Kind of like George. Yes, people don't realize George Carlin used to perform in a suit when he first started as well.
Yeah, he did. Well, in those days, sure, everybody did. When you went on Sullivan or, Jack Parr or Steve Allen show.
Yeah.
You wore a suit and tie. I mean, that was just the uniform du jour.
And one of my all-time favorite character actors, you got to tell me about your experience with Dick Van Dyke.
Man, I got to tell you, I spent a week with Dick. We did a show. It was an off-Broadway play called Breakfast with Les and Bess.
Mm-hmm.
So it was Dick and Cloris Leachman. So he had been going through the divorce with Michelle at the time. And, we spent a lot of time hanging out in the dressing room, smoking cigarettes in those days, talking about it. And Cloris, who was such an anti-smoker, she would be outside the door, banging on our dressing room door. She had a vocabulary of a truck driver, this woman, when she wanted to. I mean, she let loose with some words that even I and Dick looked at each other. Did she just use those in a sentence?
Yeah.
You're in there effing smoking. Yeah, so it was a real treat to work with her, I'll tell you.
He went through a pretty tough period in his life battling the bottle.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I had heard stories about him, in Los Angeles, being under the influence of alcohol and just going up to people, slurring, you know who I am? But he cleaned himself up, and God bless him. He was 96, 97, and he's still working.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
He drove his Lexus into a tree the other day. He was
Yes.
he was driving. It was raining, and I guess he just caught hydroplaned a little bit. And thank God nobody got injured. But he looks great for 97 years old. He looks, for a guy who underwent everything that he did in his career and in his life. That's quite amazing.
Yeah, you'd think a guy like that would have a driver, though.
Yeah, but I think
one would assume his. Yeah,
but I think that how many different athletes do you see? Basketball players and whatever. It doesn't matter whatever sport, football, hockey. It doesn't matter. Guys are making like millions and tens of $millions a year, millions of dollars a year. Get busted for impaired or get into an accident, or God forbid something serious happens in the accident, and you think to yourself, why didn't you just hire a driver?
Yeah. Well, that would be logical thinking, but these people don't think in that capacity. Unfortunately, I think it's gone to their head. And
I suppose.
And besides, the guy's got a $500,000 Ferrari. He wants to drive it.
Well, then drive it to the bar and have your buddy drive it back.
Precisely.
And pay him a couple $100.
You know what? Sit in the front wheel and have it towed home.
Yeah, just get somebody from the studio to set it up on a truck with a camera,
that's
right?
The ultimate in wealth, is having somebody tow you home.
Yes, that's right.
You have your own tow truck driver.
Yeah. You somehow were involved with Electric Light Orchestra.
Yeah.
Tell me that. Definitely. Share that story with me.
I get a phone call one day from a gentleman I knew, a music attorney in Los Angeles, asking me if I would sign on as president of a corporation to handle the Electric Light Orchestra's Canadian tours. In those days, I don't know what the percentage is now, but there used to be a 15% withholding tax taken off the top of any act tour in Canada. And if you had a Canadian who had a corporation set up for them, it was only 8 points. So at the height of ELO's fame, they were making a lot of money.
They were huge.
So so that 7-8% extra for them was a lot of money. So I signed on as president, and it was fun in those days. You got to, any concert in town, I could just phone up and say, Gary Chowen, president of Polygon Publishing. ELO, how many tickets do you need, Mr. Chowen? How many backstage passes do you want? So it was fun until there was a little issue with the government tax department, which is turns out that the promoter, who I will not name, out of Quebec, was taking all the personal withholding tax and putting it in his own bank account, and gaining all the interest money, not paying the taxes on it. So, my name being president, I was the one who was, in trouble for it. So I phoned up Barry, the lawyer, and we got it all straightened out. And then I told him, look, I don't want anything to do with this business anymore. This is brutal. And he goes, well, it's not that easy. And I go, what? He says, you're going to have to meet this gentleman by the name of Don Arden, who's Sharon Osbourne's father, by the way, from... Ozzy.
Yeah, sure.
Sharon Ozzy. And he was known as the Al Capone of the music business. So I said, well, okay, how do I go about meeting him? So they said, well, we'll fly to New York, and you'll have to have a meeting with him and explain why you don't want to be the president of his company anymore. Okay, so off I go to New York, and then I got to put me up a beautiful hotel, and I get a phone call. Okay, tomorrow, Waldorf Astoria Hotel. 2:00, Mr. Arden. Okay, off I go. Go to the Waldorf, go to the towers, ring the doorbell. And I had a number in mind that I wanted, to get out of it for my trouble financially. And so this very, very large man opens the door, and beautiful English suit on, escorts me into this massive hotel room, which I noticed there's a lot of very, very large men dressed in suits there. I mean, okay, what is this? And they put me in the living room. I'm sitting there, and before I see him, I see a cigarette holder come around the corner.
Yeah.
Followed by this guy who's like a munchkin. He's square like a block of granite, bald head, had on a floor-length, magnificent Chinese silk robe with this big cigarette holder. Sits down across from me and wants to know who I am. and why I don't want to be involved anymore. I explained everything, and I'm shaken, and I am so afraid of this guy now. And he says, "Well, what do you want?" And I was so afraid I blurted out half the amount I wanted, and he got up and nodded and left, and that was it. I was out of the music business.
Yeah.
But yeah, scary people.
When did you make the transition from show business to running a salon or becoming a stylist
You know what?
full time?
All during the time and all the shows that I was working, I was still in the salon maintaining a clientele.
Really?
I pretty well worked almost 30 years, 7 days a week. You know, yeah, it was tough, but I always maintained a clientele, which I'm glad because of I mean, the television business dried up for me. All my connections have gone, retired, or passed on. And now it's a game for children. I get the occasional call once in a while. I got a call a few years ago. It was for a big corporation here to do they needed 1940 hairdos. So I said, okay, I'll go in and talk to the producer. And I walk in and, he's got his baseball cap turned sideways. And I look at him and I'm thinking, I got phone messages older than you. I haven't returned yet. Okay. And, he goes on to tell me, he goes, I want to shoot this like a real period piece. Well, to me, that 17th century Renaissance is a period piece. He goes, like middle 1960s. I think, oh, God.
Yeah.
So I said, well, how much do you have to pay? And he threw me a number and I got up and I said, look, I have bus fare home. You're paying peanuts. Phone a monkey. And I walked out the door. That was my last time. It was just, it's insulting what they pay now. They want you to do everything for nothing.
Yeah.
Well,
it's like that in my land as well, in radio as well. It's corporations take it over, and corporations look at bottom line. It's all bottom line. It's all bean counters.
Of course it is.
Line.
Yeah, it's not like the old days. I mean, when I did a thing once. We shot it in a prison, and the budget was astronomical. It was with Morgan Freeman, and it was great. It was live to air. So as you saw it on TV, it was an ABC movie of the week.
Right.
And Morgan he played the warden. And so we shot it in a penitentiary. The penitentiary stuff was inserted. That had to be pre-taped and into the actual live broadcast. So, I mean, the numbers that they used, for this, what it costs. And first of all, let me tell you, it's not fun being the hairdresser in prison, I noticed. Not a good place for me to be.
Yeah.
By the third hour, I was going out to my friend who was producing this thing. I think I need danger pay, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was quite the place.
Well, mind you, you've done hair for corpses as well.
Yeah, I did. I did for my father, actually. His girlfriend passed away, and he asked me if I would. He said they didn't like the way that the people there did her hair. Can you go in and help? And how do you say no to your dad? So off I go. Where was it? Somewhere on Queen Street. And I remember going in with my little bag, and there she is laying there, and and they left me alone except for this gentleman who worked there who looked like Lurch from the Munsters was over me. And I could feel this guy over. I said, sir, you got to get back or leave. So, I took a look and, the hair was all cold and clammy. And oh, God, what do you do? So nobody was around. True story. I picked her up, her head up. I took my scissors. I cut it all. I shoved it underneath. Made it look the best I can, walked next door to a bar and got drunk.
Oh, Jesus. I would have done the same thing in reverse order. I don't think I could have walked in there and taken on that kind of attack.
It wasn't easy. I'll tell you, that was the first and a last.
Yeah.
That wasn't fun.
Let me ask you, you work on, you've got a salon that you work out of on Schollard Street in Toronto.
Studio 91 on Schollard.
COVID cast a spell on so many industries that people don't talk about. We talk about the hospitality industry, specifically the bars and live nightclubs, etc. How they got killed because they kept getting shut down, open up, shut down, open up, shut down, open up. Some of them could pivot, and some of them could sell food from the curb, and some of them couldn't. The hairstyling industry and nail salon industry in general, got hammered.
Big time, Ted. Big time. I would say personally, I'm still down 50 to 60% of my business. And I think one of the reasons is, so, the majority of people are now working from home. So say you lived in Don Mills, Scarborough, Steeles Avenue, and you used to come down to Toronto every day to work. Now you're at home. Why would you get out of your comfy Lululemons, get in this ridiculous traffic we have in the city? There's no parking anywhere.
Yeah.
When you can go to your local mall 10, 15 minutes away, free parking, get a decent haircut. You're only sitting at home on Zoom. So we've lost all that business. A lot of people, I think, took the money and ran when COVID came. The people sold their houses. I know a few people that have actually, they just moved all out to the East Coast, and a lot of people are cutting their own hair at home still.
Yeah.
I have clients who might come in and say, look, my wife cut my hair or my husband cut my hair. Not bad, huh? And I look at it and I figure, well, I think we have two different versions of not bad here. It's that divot in the back I don't know what to do with.
Yeah.
But yeah, and listen, people don't have the money. I don't blame them. But yeah, we're really hurting business. It's not just us. It's all salons.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been very, very hard.
If someone will approach you now, a young person would approach you now and say, "This is the career that I like to fashion for myself," what would your words be to them?
Don't.
Don't.
Just don't do it. I mean, it's impossible to build a clientele. You're going to go home with nothing. It's just not worth, getting into that industry anymore. A lot of the kids, they think, I want to be television hairdresser. I want to do a movie star. Well, it's not that easy, I mean, that's just a lot of right place, right time. And you can get great jobs in the world, but the key is having to keep that great job.
Yeah.
I always looked at it with the Sonny and Cher thing. Yeah, I got a job that every hairdresser in America wanted. And in those days, though, when I went to work at CBS, it was a union law from the 50s that there was no men hairdressers who worked in studios and no women makeup artists. All men were, an old union law. I couldn't walk on set if I walked on set, then the production company could be fined like $500. So
what was the
they
logic?
Worked it out.
What was the logic behind that?
Absolutely no idea. Absolutely no idea. But that's the way it used to be when I was there. Yeah, they're all women hairdressers and men makeup artists. The head makeup artist, the head hairdresser, who had been at CBS for like 40, 50 years, when she found out they're bringing some 17-year-old kid from Toronto down to do Cher's hair, I mean, she wanted that job, and rightfully so. She earned it. I mean, she'd been there forever. And so I remember being at Bob Mackey's when Bob and I first met, and somebody said, "Have you met?" I won't give her name yet, and I said, "No, I haven't." I said, "I'm scheduled to see her tomorrow at CBS." So I go. They said, "Be very, very careful. Apparently, she has it out for you." What are you talking about? I just got here. So the next day, I show up at CBS. I meet her. Lady cannot be nice enough to me. I know you're new here. Anything I can help you with? I walked away thinking, wow, nice lady. And then she turned on me and had the unions on me and this production company. And yeah.
Well, you raise a good point when you talk about, getting the great job. And in television specifically, you latch on to Sonny and Cher, and it's a hit show, and you think this is terrific. But that television shows, generally speaking, have a short shelf life. There aren't many Johnny Carsons with 30 years in them for the same on the same
Right.
program. That doesn't exist anymore.
No.
Sitcoms last 4 to 6 to 7 years. That's it.
Yeah.
There are no Bonanzas or Gunsmoke that go on for 48 years, or the Simpsons for that matter.
No. I mean, they used to shoot 26 episodes and then they'd rerun 26 episodes. You got 52 weeks. There's your year. Now, a lot of these great shows that are on, there might be 10 episodes. And then you got to wait a year and a bit till the next season starts up. I don't understand it, but like everything else, it changed.
Yeah. But no regrets?
None whatsoever. None. I can't regret anything I've ever done, in the television industry, the hair industry. Yeah, maybe I wish I would have, got an education, become the CEO of a major corporation, but that didn't happen. But yeah, it's been good. It's been a hell of a ride, great career. Just the people you meet, the connections you meet, the friendships you form. I mean, what's great about being involved, and even in your situation of being in the business, is to be surrounded by such great creative people all day.
Hmm.
It just feeds your creativity. It's a
Right.
joy to be around. That most of them are smart, intelligent, just good, solid people who, just want to do what they do. So, yeah, no, I don't have any regrets.
Well, that's good because if you could walk away at the end of it with nothing but positive memories
Yeah.
and have met great people, and as you mentioned, John Byner became a very close friend of yours. You meet friends who stay friends for life. You can't really ask much more than that.
No, you really can't, except the lottery win. But
Yeah,
other
for
than
sure.
that, yeah, throw that in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's been great show. I mean, I've had some shows where I just wanted to crawl away. I mean, quickly, I did a show. We did Romeo and Juliet on Ice with Dorothy Hamill for Disney, and Dorothy had that short little haircut at the time, and I had to make this 3.5 pound hairpiece to put on her head. And the day all the money guys from Disney came up, and we shot it at CFTO. We had the rink in the studio, and we went into rehearsals. And I had the hairpiece tacked onto her head. Dorothy went into a camel spin. She went one way, and the wig went the other way. I figured, oh, God, let me just crawl in a crack in the ice. But yeah, there's
Yeah.
been so many crazy, crazy incidences, situations you're in. I mean, I've had the opportunity of having Bill Medley from the Righteous Brothers sing to Bob Einstein and myself Unchained Melody 3 times.
Yeah.
Bob kept telling me, we have a problem with the mic. We have to do it again, Bill. There was no problem during rehearsals.
Yes,
Just so we could get Bill Medley to sing to us.
just keep milking it for until he figures it out, right?
Yeah.
Lots of great stories, and I'm eternally grateful for you sharing them with us. I appreciate you taking the time. It's always great chatting with you, Gary.
Ted, a pleasure. I'd love to do it again because there's so many other stories we could go through and have fun with.
I'd love to
But
do that.
yeah, it was great. I appreciate you having me on today. Look forward to it.
All right. The Edward Scissorhands of Canada, Gary Chowen.
Hair by Gare,
Hair by
Studio
Gare.
91, GaryChowen.com website.
There you go. Thanks very much. We will talk soon.
Thank you, Ted. Stay well, my friend.
And thank you to all of you for tuning in and listening. And we hope that you'll join us again next week. And if you get a chance, drop by our website, www.tedwallowshin.ca. And there you will find a listing of all of our previous episodes. You can listen back to all of them. You can sign up and share your comments and thoughts with us. We would appreciate that. Also appreciate going online and check out the organ and tissue donation opportunities. You could change or even save a life. Have a great week.
The Ted Wallachin podcast has been brought to you by Tom's Place. For the finest in men's clothing at unbeatable prices, it's Tom's Place at 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market. Tom's Place will suit you. And ETP Canada, providing estate administration with ease. The Ted Wallachin podcast is produced by me, Becky Coles. Technical production by Paul Gatt. Music by Bike Thieves. For more information on this podcast and our sponsors, and to talk to Ted, go to www.tedwallachin.ca.